Okay, so before we get into the video, I wanted to let you guys know that I messed up. In my previous video, if you have watched that video, thank you. Give this video a thumbs up. If you have or haven't watched this video, just give this video a thumbs up. If you're watching this video, you want the information that I'm about to give to you. Well, like I said, I messed up. I have like this notebook where, if you know about my Camaro, I basically have an LQ4 swap Camaro in a way, right? I wrote all my notes down, figured out what parts I did and didn't want, figured out how they work together. Well, I did the same thing for the Silverado. Well, I left that notebook at home, so all my notes I don't have, which is great. I pretty much know a lot of the stuff, but the actual numbers, I want to make sure I give you the right numbers, the right part numbers, and all that good stuff. So I'm saying all this to say that I'm gonna throw it up on the screen, whatever I'm talking about. It's not that hard to remember what I need to tell you, but like I said, the details to make sure you get it right for whatever you decide to do is important to me because it's important to you. Otherwise this video is kind of pointless. All right, so that was a really silly intro. Sorry about that. If you've seen, I guess I haven't edited this video yet, but I'm figuring when I do, you'll see all the nice trucks that I saw this morning at the car show or the truck show. So that was pretty cool. Kind of immersing myself in the Houston atmosphere basically. So hopefully this wind isn't too terrible. It's kind of windy out here. But like I said, let's get into the video. So what do I have? I have a 2002 Chevrolet Silverado 1500. Two-wheel drive, not four-wheel drive, single cab, regular bed. You know, most people are going to be familiar with this truck, like I've said before 100 times before, but I'm sure somebody new. So what does that mean? Well, the truck behind me I've had since 2012, so it was like 10 years old when I got it. Pretty good miles, and it's just been my project ever since. I've just been working on it, continuing to build it to what I want it to be. Now there's a video out there where I said I was gonna how to turbo a Silverado and everything like that. That video is like 5 years old by this point. I still don't have a turbo, but I will say, if you're watching this video, this truck behind me has every single part minus the rear end, because the rear end, not sure, but everything else besides the rear end could take, I don't want to jinx myself, but it could take 1,000 horsepower pretty easily. Every other piece of the truck has been touched except for the rear end. So enough of me talking, enough of you guys just seeing me. I just want to talk to you guys, man. I'm really getting back in the groove of things. But anyways, let's go check out the truck. All right, so here it is, 02 Silverado. Like I said, this video isn't about the whole overview of the truck, just what's underneath the hood. So let's get into that. I'll open up the hood real quick. So here it is. Now, if you watched my previous video, I pretty much gave you the basics of it, but I'm gonna give you the details now. So this engine bay looks just like, you know, your normal upgraded top end, upgraded 5.3 4.8 truck. Well, luckily it's not just that. I'm not gonna say it's anything much better than that, because I'm not gonna lie, I was one of those guys. I had a stock bottom end 5.3 in here. This truck originally came with a 5.3 on a 4L60. That's what this truck had. I had some Texas Speed ported heads, 2 different custom cams that I had in here, this intake, pretty much everything else except for the block and those other heads was pretty much the same. But let's get into it. What is this? This is a LQ4 Gen 3 short block. So basically this is a 2500 style block. Don't quote me on that because I never figured out exactly what this engine came out of, but it does work for my application. 9 times out of 10 they usually come out of a 2500 Savannah van, even a UPS truck maybe, with the low output 6 liters. You do have your high output 6 liter engines, which are your LQ9s, the Escalade, some of the nicer, I guess Denali's probably got them too, maybe 1500s depending on how it was built. You get your high output LQ9. But as far as this engine, none of that matters. Why is that? So this engine, besides pretty much the block, and I guess you could say the crank, have nothing to do with the LQ9 or LQ4 or LQ9 whatsoever. The crank is the same, basically the same crank I had in my 5.3. It's just the LS1 style standard stroke crank. This is not a stroked engine, so it's not a 408, it's not a 402, none of that. It is a stock cube or stock liter, 6 liter. It's just very simple. Besides the main caps too, I guess they're the only 3 things I can really think of. So you've got ARP main studs, and like I said, I'll add parts numbers to most of this stuff. ARP main studs, a milling oil pump. It even has now it has a Circle D billet flywheel on the back. Doesn't really matter, it doesn't mean anything, but I mean, that's just how far I went into this engine. So the whole bottom end is pretty much as bulletproof if I can make it without, you know, putting a different crank in it. I mean, besides that, I mean, unless you get an LSX block, I mean, this iron block, especially the 6.0s, 5.3s, 4.8s, I mean, if you're watching this video, you know a little bit about those blocks. I mean, you could put 1,000 horsepower to them with stock rods and pistons. Not saying I would do that, not saying you're gonna have a good time doing it, but it'll do it a few times at least. Especially a Gen 3. Gen 4, you can have a little bit more fun. But like I said, this is a Gen 3, so that means the knock sensors are in the valley, 24X reluctor wheel instead of a 48X. None of the great stuff, but the good parts and pieces are here. Moving up, it has the Summit Racing, basically rod and piston kit. If you know anything about that, I've said it 1,000 times, just like this intake. This intake looks like your standard intake, but if I took this intake off and put it right next to a Holley Sniper intake, they're literally identical. I've never got a definitive answer, but from the research that I've done and the people I've talked to, that is a Holley Sniper intake, just like this throttle body is basically some version of a Holley throttle body. I want to say the throttle body is a little bit, probably not just Holley, only because there's so many companies that make throttle bodies like that. But this intake, because there are other ones that look like this, but they're not shaped like this fully. Like I said, I've sat this exact intake next to a Holley Sniper intake, and it is nut and bolt weld identical, except for not having Holley Sniper on the front. So I say all that to say Summit does a lot of this. I had the pistons in my hand. If you've seen the video, you've seen it. It is a Wiseco piston, or some version of a Wiseco, or a CP Carrillo. It is a good quality piston. But Summit just gets them at a way less price. I feel like they order just a ton of them, and then the manufacturer, the actual manufacturer, can give Summit a great price on them just because they have so many. So if you know about supply and demand and quantity versus cost, you'll kind of understand that. Same thing with the rods. It says Summit LS whatever on the rods. It looks just like freaking, I mean, I'm not gonna say it doesn't look, I'm not gonna say a Callie's rod, probably not that great, but it looks like a really good rod. ARP bolts on the rods, right? So that's pretty much the bottom end. I mean, there's really not much that goes into the bottom end. Like I said, I have a milling high pressure oil pump. This truck idles at about 60 psi oil pressure. So that makes me feel good. That makes me know, you know, my engine's not coming apart. Brand new bearings all the way through. So what bearings did I get? I forgot. I'll put it on the screen. But brand new bearings all the way through the bottom, and you know, the main bearings, cam bearings, brand new. So I mean, however many miles, if I could check it right now, that are on the odometer, I believe it's only a few thousand miles. This is like a brand new motor. I do have a Cam Motion Titan 3 LS1 camshaft. I mentioned that in my last video, and I'll put that here. Titan 3 LS1 camshaft. The reason I did that is I wanted to get an off-the-shelf camshaft. This truck has had 2 custom cams in it before, and you know, when people are asking me about, hey, does it work, what do you think about it, it's really hard to give people direction on what you should do as far as camshaft versus mine, because there are some pros and cons to those previous camshafts, and I don't want to tell someone to get it and they hate it, and you're like, well, this guy, he don't know what he's talking about. I experiment with a lot of stuff, not because I have the money to, but just because I want to, and if I don't like it, I'll do the work necessary to fix it later on. Like I said, I went with a shelf camshaft just so when you guys ask me, hey, what cam is in it? That truck sounds good. I want this one. I want to do that, because it's a Titan 3. They have like up to stage 5 of that cam, but like I said, I have the stage 3. I was going to get the stage 4, but I called Cam Motion and they told me that for what I have, get to stage 3. So I just went with what they told me. You can even get a stage 2 or stage 1, and you can still be in the same family as what I have. That's another reason why I got it, because there's so many options. I did tell them later on that this truck will be Pro Charged. Spoiler alert, I'm getting a Pro Charger on this engine. It's kind of the reason this engine's in here, but I'll finish that at the end of the video. But like I said, Titan 3 LS1 style, and that just means cathedral port version. They probably got a rectangle port version too, or like a LS3 style, I guess they would call it. So you just have to keep that in mind depending on what heads you're going to run, because you could convert all this to square or rectangle port. One of the best parts of this truck is, to me, you know, some people might have a different opinion about them right now, but the Frankenstein engine dynamic cylinder heads, ported heads. Like I said, these are 243 heads. I've done a great video on those heads as well. So 243 heads to go along with the pistons that I wanted with the cam to complement the compression ratio that I wanted. I put the compression ratio and probably all the other good stuff on the screen, so you know what I'm talking about. The top end, pretty much beyond that, is the same Holley Sniper intake, 80 pound per hour fuel injectors in it now, because the 6.0 was trying to kill itself. You know, it was running out of fuel just a little bit on the ejector side, so we did that. It's got Speed Engineering long tube headers on it, way better header than what I had on it. I had some Pacesetter headers that did not fit on this truck whatsoever. Well, they fit, but they didn't fit that great, so we fixed that. Really, that's going to be your whole parts and pieces to this engine. 92mm throttle body. Like I said, nothing too special, but it works. Another thing somebody will probably ask me, so I finally figured out how to make, you know, the cables work, because we had a different setup for the cables, but if you get this ICT billet throttle body adapter, you can mount it. You gotta, I guess, I don't know if you could do this with a stock intake, because you got to be able to mount it to some fuel rails, but it works, and the cruise control works. I used that today, so that was great. The cruise control still works with that. So yeah, I mean, you know, you can decide whether you want to do that or not. Mighty Mouse catch cam, just to keep everything clean as possible. ATI super dampener down there as well. You can't really see, it's probably too dark, but he's down there hanging out. Dual fans as well. But besides all that nerd stuff, like I said, I'll give you guys, you know, I'll try to make a parts list or whatever, but that's cool, right? But you don't really care. You guys want to hear what this thing sounds like. So looks like I got a good sized lot around here. I think I found a good spot where I can have a little fun, right? So I'm gonna start this thing up, give you guys a couple revs, might do a little pull out here, and to finish off, 4L80 transmission. So it's got a built Sid Neal Racing 4L80 transmission in it. It's not like in a Reed case or anything like that. It is a stock case, stock gear ratio 4L80, but it was rebuilt by Sid Neal Racing Transmissions. Really good group of guys, and transmission's been pretty solid ever since. Also, along with that, it has a Circle D billet faced converter on it. I forgot which converter it has in it now, but it's in there now, along with the flywheel. That was one of the things that was kind of holding me up from uploading. Let's see, here's a box for it. Let's see if there's anything good in here. I know the old converter's in here and the old flywheel, but yeah, so there's an old converter. I've got something planned with that for you guys, so just keep that in mind if you're watching this video. If you're in the Houston area, Circle D converter coming somebody's way. But besides that, I think that's it. Am I missing anything out? Yes, you gotta get your drive shaft adjusted if you're gonna put a 4L80 in it. But I mean, if you're doing that, you should know. If you're doing that type of swap, you should know. Stock computer, nothing special there. A good tune on it. It passes the mission. It does what it's supposed to do. My valve covers leak because those gaskets have been on this truck for a long time, through probably 2 set of heads already. So yeah, it's time for some new valve cover gaskets. But that's it. In the future stand, talking to you guys right now. Realized in the video, didn't mention it, I'm sure somebody's gonna ask. The truck made, I believe it was 395 horsepower. I'll put the dyno sheet up. But let's keep that in mind. That's the horsepower the truck made. I mean, it's pretty simple to understand. But like I said, it's not a stroked engine. I'm kind of whispering because I'm in the neighborhood. It's not a stroked engine. It's really not even built for NA power. My goal, hopefully, is to make similar power to what this makes in the truck. So just keep that in mind. About 395 horsepower through a 4L80. Through a 4L60, probably make 420, 425, I would guess is what I'll put down. 4L80 just sucks up a lot of power. So just keep that in mind. Just wanted to jump in here and tell you guys that instead of making some weird cut. This is going to be a weird cut anyway, but you get the point.